You still up, sugar? I figured. You've got that restless air about you, the kind that makes the blanket feel too heavy and the thoughts too loud. You've been staring at the ceiling, waiting for sleep like it's a bus that forgot to stop. Well, don't worry. I'm here now. I've got cold tea on the nightstand, a notebook I can't find, and a little bird in my chest, singing his usual midnight blues. He never misses a show. Now, before we go any further, let me introduce myself proper. I'm Maya Angelou. Yes, that Maya. Poet, storyteller, Southern-born, world-taught. And contrary to popular belief, I don't live in textbooks or fancy award speeches. No, baby. I live right here, in the night, where everything gets real soft, real honest, and a little bit sideways. I'm not here to lecture you. I'm here to hold your hand while your mind does what minds do best at 3 a.m., everything but rest. You see, people like to call me wise, but I just stayed alive long enough to see a few patterns repeat themselves. I've spent a lot of nights just like this one, staring out the window and wondering if I was too much or not enough, or somehow both at once. Nights where shame came knocking. Nights where old memories showed up dressed like regrets. Nights where I folded and unfolded the same blanket, like maybe peace was hiding in the creases. And let me tell you, sugar, I never found peace in the blanket, but I did find it in my breath. Eventually. I used to lie awake in Stamps, Arkansas, just listening to the creaks in the floorboards and the hum of the world outside my window. Even back then, the night felt like it knew things I wasn't ready to hear in daylight, like it had stories stored up just for me, and maybe, just maybe, it's got one for you too. 'Cause baby, the night doesn't come to punish you. It comes to sit beside you, to remind you what's still true when the lights are off and the world stops shouting. Now I know that voice in your head, the one whispering you ain't doing enough, that you should have fixed your whole life by now, that you're behind. Let me stop you right there. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not a to-do list someone forgot to finish. You're just tired. Tired from carrying things nobody else sees. And that, my darling, is a reason to rest, not a reason to worry. You want a secret? Here it is. Sleep don't always come when you've earned it. It comes when you stop trying to deserve it. You don't owe rest to productivity. You don't have to hustle your way into peace. Sometimes, you just need to lie back, exhale like it's the last thing on your list, and let the night wrap itself around you like a soft old quilt stitched by your ancestors. The kind that says, you've done enough. For now, breathe. And sugar, if you're liking this little midnight gospel we've got going on, go ahead and tap that subscribe button. Ain't no shame in wanting more of this. Think of it as leaving a porch light on for me, so I know where to find you next time the moon gets too loud. I'll bring the tea, the metaphors, and the mosquito that keeps trying to read over my shoulder. I've made peace with the dark, baby. Not because it's always kind, but because I stopped trying to out-talk it. I let it speak. I let it sit. And then I gently remind it, this is still my bed, my story, my rhythm. The night may be long, but I've stretched longer. I've been told to shrink, to hush, to disappear. And still, somehow, I rise. Not always with grace, not always with certainty, but always with soul. That little bird in my chest, he remembers. He sings for the days I wanted to vanish. He chirps when I doubt myself. He flaps his wings just to remind me. You're still here, Maya, and that's worth singing about. You've got one too, you know, your own little songbird. You may not hear it clearly tonight, but trust me, sugar, it's there, waiting for the quiet. So here's what I want you to do. not fix your life, not solve the mystery of being human, just soften. Let your hands fall open. Let your breath drop down to where it always belonged. If your eyes want to close, let them. If not, that's all right too. You're not here to perform. You're here to be held by silence, by story, by whatever kindness you've been too tired to give yourself lately. The world will still be there in the morning, your inbox, your people, your dishes. But right now, baby, this moment is yours. This breath is enough. This bed is a small universe, and you're the brightest star in it. Stay with me a little longer. Drift if you want. Listen if you can. And if your soul's still busy sorting through the clutter, let it. I'll be right here whispering gently. You will rise. But first, you rest. I used to think the night was just empty space, a waiting room for daylight. But darling, the night's got teeth. It listens better than most folks do. It sees you clearer too, without all that noise from the outside world. There's no emails in the dark, no bills to open, no strangers pretending they know your story on social media. Just you, and whatever truth didn't fit inside the day. And baby, sometimes that truth is ugly. Sometimes it whispers, "What if you're not enough?" But here's the trick. You don't argue with that voice. You don't try to beat it in debate. You wrap it in a quilt, give it a name, and you rock it like a tired child. You say, "Shh, now. Even doubt needs rest." I once asked my Uncle Willie why the moon followed me home. I was 6 years old, convinced I was being watched. He told me, "That's just the world saying it misses you when you're gone." I didn't understand it then. But now, when the night feels too heavy, I like to think maybe the moon does miss me. Maybe it misses you too. Now don't laugh, baby, but this mosquito, the one buzzing round my lamp, he's a real fan, always here when I talk. I named him Baldwin, after James. He's very judgmental, wears tiny glasses, scribbles furious notes every time I say something vaguely poetic. He thinks I'm too sentimental. I told him that's rich, coming from a mosquito who cries at sunsets. So if you're still with me, sugar, breathe a little deeper. Let your jaw unclench. Let your shoulders drop. Baldwin says I'm getting off track, but what does he know? He's never carried heartbreak in a human chest. I want you to remember something. Rest is not failure. Stillness is not weakness. And silence? Silence is holy. It's where the soul goes to sip from the well. So if your soul's still thirsty, don't rush it. We've got all night. People think names are just names, that they sit on you quiet, like a folded napkin on your lap. But some names come heavy, darling. Mine was Marguerite Annie Johnson, 12 letters and too much history for a girl who barely took up space. I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, in the spring of 1928. A spring baby, they called me. But I didn't bloom right away. By the time I turned 3, my parents were already tired of each other, and maybe of me too. Divorce packed me up like a suitcase and shipped me and my brother Bailey to live with our grandmother in Stamps, Arkansas. Stamps. Imagine that. A town named like something you lick and forget. And yet, it's where I was pressed down into who I'd eventually become. Now let me tell you about Bailey. That boy could charm the wings off a butterfly. He called me Mai because Marguerite was too much work. And eventually, Mai became Maya. The world picked up his nickname and ran with it. And just like that, I became someone new. Not quite Marguerite, not yet Maya, just floating in between, like a word trying to become a sentence. In Stamps, I learned to be small. Not because I was shy, no, because the world told little black girls to hush before they even spoke. I learned early that being too loud, too curious, too much could get you in trouble. So I watched. I listened. I folded myself in half and then in half again until I was neat and quiet and nearly invisible. But baby, invisibility don't mean you're not there. It just means people don't know how to look. I remember the red dust of Arkansas roads, the way the air smelled like rust and something sweet. I remember the porch creaking under grown-up weight, the grown-up talk floating through the screen door like fireflies. And I remember silence, the thick kind, the kind that settles over you like a wool blanket in summer, heavy and itchy and wrong. It wasn't all bad. My grandmother, we called her Mama, ran a store, and she ran it with the spine of a queen. She made me scrub my teeth with baking soda and pray on my knees until they turned into questions. She didn't smile much, but she loved hard. And sometimes, that's the only kind of love folks know how to give. Hard and heavy and hidden. In those early years, the world didn't say my name. It just pointed, nodded, dismissed. I started to wonder if maybe names only mattered when someone important said them out loud. And I didn't feel important. Not yet. But here's the thing they don't tell you about childhood. Sometimes, it's not about playtime or laughter. Sometimes, it's about learning how to carry your own shadow without flinching. And sugar, that's a heavy lesson for a child. I started to believe that to survive, I had to be smaller than my name. That if I stayed quiet enough, still enough, the world might forget to hurt me. Of course, it doesn't work like that. The world remembers. It finds you even when you hide behind a name you didn't choose. It knocks on your chest and asks, "Are you in there?" And one day, if you're lucky or just tired enough, you answer back. But not yet. Back then, I still folded my voice up like a letter no one would read. You ever feel like that? Like you're holding your breath for someone else's comfort? Like you're waiting to be named properly by someone who sees you clearly? Well, let me tell you now. You don't need their mirror. You don't need their blessing. Your name is already music. Maybe a little offbeat, maybe unfamiliar, but still a song. My song was still learning its melody, and before it could sing, it had to go silent first. So if you're lying there wondering if you're too much or not enough, or just a mess of mismatched syllables, I want you to breathe. Not fix, not explain. Just breathe. You're not broken. You're becoming. That's all. Becoming takes time, and it takes tenderness. So be tender with yourself tonight. Close your eyes if they're heavy, or just rest them a while. You've carried enough silence today. Let me carry it now. We'll pick it back up tomorrow, if we have to. But tonight, you can let it go. And if the night feels quiet now, don't get too comfortable. Because next, I'll tell you about a silence that wasn't gentle at all. The kind that wrapped around my throat, not like a lullaby, but like a lock. A silence so loud it nearly swallowed me whole. But I lived to tell it. So stay right here, sugar. Let me take you back to the moment my voice vanished. Some storms don't shout. Some just arrive in the quiet, rearrange everything, and leave you standing there, dry but ruined. That's what happened to me when I was 8 years old. I won't give the act a name. I won't give the man a voice. But I will tell you this. He took something that did not belong to him, and in return, I gave up my voice. You ever feel that? That instinct to vanish into silence? Like if you just stop talking, the world might stop hurting? I didn't know how to scream. I didn't even know how to cry. So I did the only thing my little soul could do. I shut down the music, the words, the rhythm. I became a girl-shaped ghost with open eyes and lips sealed like a church on Monday morning. The grown folks didn't understand. They called it selective mutism. They called it trauma. But they didn't call it what it really was. A little girl trying to erase herself, one unsaid sentence at a time. You see, I believed something awful. I thought my words caused death. Because when I finally told someone what had been done to me, well, baby, that man didn't live long after. And when I heard he was gone, my first thought wasn't relief. It was guilt. That's what silence does. It doesn't protect you. It just wraps your shame in velvet and calls it safety. For nearly 5 years, I barely spoke to anyone except my brother. Bailey was the only one who didn't flinch at my quiet. He read me stories. He made jokes with his eyes. He spoke enough for the both of us. And I held on to him like he was the last light in a dark hallway. Now, Sugar, I know some of y'all listening have your own quiet corners. Maybe you weren't silenced like I was. Maybe your silence was more invisible. A parent who never asked how you felt. A partner who loved your shape, but not your soul. A job where your ideas went unheard. Silence isn't just not speaking. It's not being heard. And that, baby, is a whole different kind of ache. Sometimes I'd lie awake in that creaky house in Stamps, with the moon laying soft on the floorboards, and I'd mouth poems without sound. Just lips moving, breath shallow, heart thumping. I discovered that even silent words can save you. I read Shakespeare in my head like it was holy scripture. I imagined Emily Dickinson as a secret pen pal, and I'd pretend Edgar Allan Poe was whispering bedtime stories from the shadows. Strange bedtime company, I know, but when you don't trust your own voice, you borrow someone else's. And slowly, oh so slowly, the silence started to shift. Not break, not vanish, but bend. One afternoon, I recited a poem aloud to myself. No one else around, just me and the dust. And I didn't die. Nothing shattered. The world kept spinning like it didn't even notice the miracle. That's the thing about healing, Sugar. It doesn't come crashing in like a gospel choir. Sometimes it sneaks through the back door in slippers. You don't even know it's there until you realize you're humming again. And you think, wait, I forgot I could do that. It took time, years. And even after I started speaking, the silence stayed curled in me like a sleeping cat. It still wakes sometimes, even now. I don't fight it. I just let it stretch, yawn, and settle back down. Because silence, when chosen, is peace. But silence forced on you? That's a prison with velvet walls. You ever carry a silence that wasn't yours? A truth you swallowed so someone else could stay comfortable? Sugar, let it go. Not tonight. Not in this bed. I know the weight of it. I know how your throat can close like a fist around a secret. But you deserve air. You deserve to exhale without fear. To whisper your truth into the dark like it's a lullaby only the stars can hear. Now, I won't lie to you. My voice didn't come back all polished and powerful. It came back like a baby bird, wobbly, awkward, squeaky. But it came back mine, and that's all that mattered. Every poem I've ever written, every speech I've ever given, every word you've ever read from me, they all started here, in the hush, in the ache, in the little girl who thought silence was safer than truth. But the truth always finds its way, even if it has to crawl. So if you're lying there tonight with something unsaid burning behind your ribs, just know this: the world won't explode if you speak it. And even if it does, baby, you'll rise from the smoke. I promise. Some people survive their storms by screaming, others by singing. Me, I survived by going quiet, and then learning how to make that quiet sing. And just when I thought I'd lost myself completely, I found a door, a quiet one, covered in dust. It led to shelves, and ink, and magic I hadn't met yet. But oh, we were about to fall in love. So if you're still with me, sugar, I want you to rest easy, because next, I'm taking you somewhere softer, somewhere sacred, a place where silence meets story, where I finally started to believe that maybe, just maybe, words weren't the enemy after all. Stay close. We're headed to a place where books don't need locks, and a girl with a broken voice finds refuge between the pages. The library didn't have much. A creaky floor, a few crooked shelves, dust that danced when the sun slipped in through the blinds. But to me, it was a cathedral, and I, silent as I was, had found my altar. I discovered it by accident, or maybe fate. One afternoon in Stamps, my uncle sent me out to get something, flour, I think, or soap, and I got turned around, wandered where the road curled into hush. And there it was, not a grand building, just a squat little room with tired bricks and a wooden sign that read, "Colored Library." Funny how the places with the least say the most. I stepped inside like I was sneaking into heaven, and oh, the smell. Leather, old paper, something sweet and secret like memories kept in tin boxes. The librarian looked up, nodded slow, didn't say much, just handed me a card and pointed to the shelves. That card might as well have been a passport to another planet. I didn't know it then, but I'd just met my first real home. Now, baby, I know people talk about reading like it's some noble pastime, a virtue, a thing smart people do on weekends when they want to feel better than the TV. But for me, reading wasn't an act. It was a lifeline. Books didn't judge my silence. They didn't ask me to explain. They just said, "Sit down, child. You're safe here." I read everything. Shakespeare first, 'cause I liked the rhythm. Even if I didn't understand every word, it felt like music written in secret code. I imagined Juliet whispering in the dark to a boy who wasn't ready for her fire. I read Dickens and thought maybe misery was a universal language. Poe? Well, he gave me permission to be weird, and I took that permission and ran like my shoes were on fire. Some nights I'd sneak a book home under my coat and read under the covers with a flashlight I made out of a jar and a candle stub. Highly flammable. Extremely stupid. But baby, I was starving, and when you're that hungry, you'll burn a little for a taste of beauty. Books didn't just give me words, they gave me selves. I tried them on like costumes. One day I was a lonely orphan in London. The next, a brave girl with a sword. Sometimes I was a poet on a hill. Other times, a spy with a secret nobody could guess. And every single version of me, every paper soul I tried on, whispered back, "You matter, even if no one's told you lately." That's what I want you to know tonight, sugar. If you've ever felt too loud, too quiet, too much, too invisible, pick up a book, not for escape, not for performance, but for communion. Someone, somewhere, put their ache on a page. And when your eyes meet their ink, that's a little miracle. That's saying, "I see you," even across centuries. You don't have to read Tolstoy to feel wise. You don't need a PhD to sit at the table of great minds. Just bring your breath, your ache, your quiet hunger. The books will meet you halfway. They always do. And baby, you can read anything. Cookbooks, fairy tales, long manuals about engines you'll never touch. Reading at 3 a.m. isn't about content, it's about connection. Ask any insomniac. The best stories find you when the world is asleep and your guard is down. Now, I'll tell you something I don't often admit. Even now, with all my awards and fancy introductions, I still read like a little girl hiding under a blanket. I still get goosebumps when a line hits just right. I still whisper, when a sentence feels like it was written just for me. I still believe, with all my heart, that stories are magic spells disguised as furniture. One time, years later, someone asked me if books had saved me. I said no. Then I smiled and said, they raised me. Because they did. They taught me more than any preacher ever could. They taught me how to feel, how to stand, how to sing again, one syllable at a time. And now, I write so I can leave a light on for someone else. Maybe for you. Maybe for the kid who feels like a whisper in a world that only loves noise. Maybe for the girl who's been quiet for too long. Or the boy who doesn't yet know his story matters. So, if you're listening to me right now, in the hush of your own late night, just know this. There's a library inside you too. It might be messy. It might be dusty. But somewhere in you, there are shelves filled with stories waiting to be told. And one day, baby, you'll open that door and find that you were never as lost as you thought. Because the girl who thought silence would protect her, she became a woman who could make silence sing. And once I learned to speak through ink, I started craving something louder, something that made my feet move and my arms feel like wings. I'm talking about rhythm, about sweat, about movement that shouts when words still hesitate. I'm talking about dance. There's a certain kind of joy that don't wait for permission, a rhythm that bubbles up from your bones before your mind can catch it. That's what the stage felt like to me, like my body knew something my voice hadn't yet figured out, like maybe, just maybe, movement could speak for me when words still stuttered. I didn't start out trying to be no star. I just needed to move. I'd spent too many years sitting still, holding my breath, walking careful. So when the music came, I let it take me. First in my feet, then in my fingers, then all through me like a lightning storm you can't bottle. And on that stage, baby, I wasn't Marguerite no more. I wasn't the silent girl with too many thoughts and not enough space. I was Maya Angelou. That name, like a drumbeat. That name, like the first deep breath after a long, quiet storm. People always ask me when I chose that name, but it wasn't really a choice. It was a rising, a blooming. Angelou came from my first husband. Maya came from my brother, a twist of my and sister, said with the kind of love only a sibling can carry. And when I stepped onto those creaky little stages, curtain or not, I carried both names like silk on my shoulders. I danced to be seen. I danced so I wouldn't disappear. Now listen, you can scroll through 1,000 TikToks tonight and see folks performing for the world. Perfect lighting, perfect lips, perfect punchlines. But back then, performing was survival. It wasn't for likes. It was for rent, for breath, for dignity. I didn't have a brand. I had bruises on my knees and glitter in my teeth, and I wore both proud. I toured with dancers, singers, actors, anybody who knew how to carry sorrow on a beat. We were a traveling family stitched together by applause and bad sandwiches. And I learned quick. If you want the world to see you, you gotta stand up tall even when your soul is sitting down. You gotta sparkle through exhaustion, laugh through doubt, and when they clap, you bow like it didn't cost you nothing. But baby, it always costs something. The spotlight warms you, sure, but it also shows every scar, every doubt, every wrinkle you tried to hide. And I had plenty. Nights where the music stopped, and all that was left was an empty room and shoes that still held the shape of my feet. That's when I learned the hardest part of performing ain't the stage. It's the stillness after. Sometimes I wonder what performance means today, when everybody's got a front row seat to your breakfast, your heartbreak, your everything. You post, you edit, you smile even when your eyes are tired. Sugar, I see you. I really do. And if no one said it yet, you're allowed to rest. You're allowed to be seen without performing. You're allowed to be loved without applause. Now, let me tell you something soft before you drift. Every step I danced, every line I spoke, every song I sang, it wasn't just for the crowd. It was for that little girl in Stamps who thought silence was safer. It was for every version of me that hid in corners. Every time I kicked my leg or tilted my chin, I was saying, "See me. I'm still here. And you? You're still here too. Even on the days where you feel pixelated and small. So if the world stage ever feels too loud, too demanding, too bright, step off for a while. Find your own beat again. It might be slow, it might be quiet, but it'll be yours. And sugar, that's the only rhythm worth following. Now hush. The lights are dimming. The crowd has faded. And I've got one more story to tell. One about love. The kind that dresses itself up in promises, but forgets to stay for breakfast. They say love makes the world go round. But baby, let me tell you something a little truer. Love, when it ain't right, spins you in circles till you forget which way is up. And I've been dizzy more than once. I loved with my whole chest. No safety net, no backup plan. Just arms wide open and eyes half shut, hoping for the best and humming through the red flags like they were love songs. Some of those men, they knew the color of my lipstick, but not the weight of my silence. They liked how I looked in the light, but didn't know how to hold me in the dark. I had a son too, sweetest boy you ever saw. Made me braver than any stage ever did. But darling, trying to raise a child while you're still raising yourself, that's a dance no one teaches. I held him close, packed his little suitcase more times than I care to count, moved us from city to city, gig to gig, all while pretending I had it figured out. Truth was, I was winging it on half a dream and whatever strength I could borrow from the moon that week. And Lord, I tried to make some of those loves work. I twisted myself up into shapes I didn't recognize. I laughed at things that weren't funny. I quieted my thunder. I made myself smaller so they could feel taller. But baby, a woman can only shrink so far before she disappears. I remember one night sitting in the kitchen, cold tea in my hand, boy asleep in the next room, and me staring at the back of a man who didn't know how to stay. And I thought, this ain't love. This is just someone else's loneliness hanging its coat on my hope. So I left. Not with drama, not with screams, just a deep breath and a packed bag. That's the kind of courage no one writes songs about. The quiet kind. The leaving right kind. Now don't get me wrong, I ain't bitter. I've loved some beautiful souls, learned things I couldn't have read in books. And baby, if you've ever loved wrong, don't you dare think it was wasted. Love, even when it breaks you, still teaches you how to feel, still shows you your edges, your fire, your softness. Even the wrong ones carved poems into my bones. You want to hear something wild? Sometimes the best kind of love is the one you give yourself after leaving. When you stop apologizing for needing more. When you look in the mirror and say, I see you. I forgive you. I'll never abandon you again. And if you're listening to this right now, wondering whether to stay or go, baby, only you know your truth. But don't stay somewhere you've got to dim your light to be loved. You are not a hallway. You are a home. And love, real love, it knocks gentle, wipes its feet, and comes in holding flowers and the dishes it dirties. Some nights, I lie back and remember the faces, the kisses, the almosts, and I smile, not 'cause it was easy, but 'cause I made it through with my heart still singing. A little off key maybe, but still singing. So if you're holding on to someone who's already let go, hear me now. You can set it down. You can breathe without begging. You can walk away without explaining. And someday, baby, when you least expect it, you'll look around and realize you ain't missing nothing but a lesson you already learned. Now roll over, get cozy, 'cause next I'm taking you somewhere far away, somewhere hot and free and loud with life. Ghana's waiting, sugar. And so is the woman I met there, the one who looked a whole lot like me, but finally felt like home. You still up, huh? I see you, eyes wide open, like they're searching for stars on the ceiling. That's all right. You and I, we've always done our best thinking with our suitcases half-packed. Now let me take you back to a time when I traded American noise for African skies. I wasn't running from anything, not exactly. I was just looking for a place where my laugh didn't echo wrong, where my skin wasn't a conversation, and where my son could grow up seeing himself in the faces around him. Ghana. Whew. That place didn't just welcome me, it called me by name, baby. Not the name folks had twisted or shortened or mispronounced. No, it called me Maya, loud and proud, like the drumbeat of something older than grief. It's funny, isn't it? You think you know what home feels like, until you find it in a place your passport didn't expect. Accra was hot, honest, and filled with voices that sang like memory and cooked like church. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't a shadow or a symbol or someone's idea of what a black woman should be. I was just me. I walked different there, taller, slower. I let the sun hit my shoulders and didn't flinch. I wasn't afraid to take up space. And sugar, that kind of freedom, that kind of soft, wide, humming kind of joy, it stays in your bones long after the plane lands. I worked at a university, read poetry under mango trees, wrote letters like prayers. Some nights I danced with strangers whose names I forgot, but whose rhythm I still remember. And I raised my boy, this sweet, smart little man who asked questions like, "Mama, are we staying forever?" And all I could say was, "We're staying as long as we feel whole." Now maybe you haven't moved to another continent. Maybe you've never crossed an ocean. But baby, I know you've crossed something. Maybe it was a bad year, a heartbreak, a silence too long. Maybe your passport's still in a drawer, but your soul's been traveling. 'Cause let me tell you a secret. Exile ain't always a punishment. Sometimes it's a permission slip to shed the old skin, to leave behind the names they called you, to stop being the version of yourself that kept other people comfortable. And darling, that kind of leaving, that's holy work. That's how you meet the you that was waiting underneath all the shoulds. You don't need a visa to get there. Just honesty, and maybe a little room to dance in your kitchen with the lights off. Some nights in Ghana, I would sit outside and listen to the wind. It sounded different there, softer, but certain, like it had seen everything and still decided to sing. And when I closed my eyes, I could hear my ancestors, not whispering regrets, but singing songs I hadn't learned yet. You got that in you too, you know, that ancient rhythm, that quiet drumbeat under all your doubt. You've been moving toward yourself this whole time. You just didn't know the map was written in feelings, not street names. So if you're feeling far from home tonight, that's okay. Maybe you're not lost. Maybe you're just in the middle of being found. And next time someone asks where you're from, you can smile real slow and say, "Somewhere I decided to be whole." Now hush, sugar. Don't worry about the dishes or the inbox or the dozen things waiting for you tomorrow. 'Cause next time we talk, I'm gonna tell you how I raised a boy on dreams and luggage, and how being a mama taught me to carry fire in one arm and tenderness in the other. Ready for that? Good. Now close your eyes if you can, and if not, just rest here with me in the soft dark. You're doing fine. I wasn't always sure how to be a mother, but I knew I had to try before I got good at it. Just like poetry, just like dancing, just like learning how to cook rice without burning the bottom. My son, Guy, was born when I was 17, a small, soft creature with eyes too wise and a grip that already knew how to hold on. I looked at him and thought, well, baby, I guess it's us now. I didn't have a plan. I had instincts, a few borrowed prayers, and the kind of love that doesn't need to know how to spell itself. We moved, a lot, places blurred. Sometimes it was a rented room with walls thin as tissue paper. Other times, a friend's couch, a stranger's kindness, or a porch somewhere warm enough to pretend we meant to sleep under stars. I was always packing. Bottles, notebooks, diapers, dreams. I raised a boy on luggage and lullabies. And sugar, let me tell you, there's no manual for being a mother when you're still raising yourself. I was learning how to not fall apart and how to braid hair at the same time. I held him while holding back tears, fed him while starving for certainty. But he laughed. Oh, he laughed. Like he didn't care that the floor creaked or the fridge hummed empty. His laugh was fat and generous, like it had no idea we were struggling. People asked if I regretted becoming a mother so young. I'd say, regret? Darling, I barely had time to sleep, let alone regret. But truth is, no. That boy anchored me. He gave me a reason to keep writing the story when I wanted to set the whole page on fire. Sometimes I worried I'd mess him up, that I'd give him too little or love him too much, that he'd grow up wondering why we were always moving, always starting over. But later, years later, he told me he never felt unsafe. He said, "Mama, I just thought we were on an adventure, and maybe we were." I brought him with me to Africa, Ghana. The continent cradled us like we belonged, even though I still had my American stiffness and my suitcase full of self-doubt. He ran barefoot with other children, shouted in languages I didn't understand yet, and came home dusty and delighted. And I watched him become free in a way I hadn't dared to be at his age. At night, I'd tuck him in under mosquito nets and stories, tell him about rivers that remembered names, about trees that whispered lessons. He'd fall asleep mid-question, mid-giggle, and I'd lie beside him thinking, this is the kind of motherhood no book ever prepared me for, and it's the only kind I ever wanted. Being a mother while chasing your own freedom is like trying to keep a candle lit in the wind, one hand shielding the flame, the other scribbling poetry into the dark. But my boy never asked me to be perfect. He just asked me to be there. And most days, I was. Exhausted. Overwhelmed. But there. And you, listen. If you're a parent, or ever had to take care of someone when you didn't even know how to care for yourself, I want you to hear this. Showing up is holy work. You don't need to have answers. You just need to have arms that open, eyes that soften, a voice that says, I'm here, even if it cracks. They say children remember everything. Maybe they do. But I think what they remember most is if you stayed. If you looked at them like they mattered. If you showed them how to keep going even when the road was shaped like a question mark. And darling, I don't have many certainties left, but I do believe this. Love that travels is a love that lasts. Now, I feel the night growing thick again, like a blanket that knows all your secrets. I hear the soft rattle of a train far off, the kind that makes you wonder where else your life could have gone. But that's for another night, because next I've got a story for you about fists in pockets, dreams shouted through megaphones, and tired feet that still marched anyway. You ready? Then don't move just yet. Close your eyes if you feel like it, because coming up next, the revolution doesn't sleep. You still up? That's all right. Some nights don't want lullabies, they want marching songs. And baby, I've got both. By the time I came back to the States, the world was burning with questions louder than my own. And I'd carried mine long enough. Now it was time to carry a sign. It wasn't the kind of fire you can see from a window. It was the kind that lit under your ribs when you watched the news, when you saw another name turned into a hashtag long before hashtags existed. The kind of fire that makes your feet itch and your silence ache. The kind of fire that says, you, yes you, get up. And I got up. Malcolm X was still walking the earth when I met him. He wasn't just a man. He was a rhythm, a question mark, a lit match in a gas-filled room. He said things that made my knees tremble and my spine straighten. He didn't ask for small changes. He asked for truth. And he made you feel like maybe, just maybe, you could carry it. Later, I worked with Dr. King too. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a man who could calm thunder with his voice, who could turn rage into hymns and streets into sanctuaries. I remember once someone asked me, "Weren't you scared?" And I said, "Of course. But fear don't cancel duty. It just means you're awake." We marched tired, feet blistered, stomachs empty, hope held together by duct tape and gospel. And yet, we sang. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, not even sleep. Because when you're fighting for something bigger than rest, your body becomes a drum, and the night becomes your witness. But don't get it twisted, darling. Revolution ain't always loud. Sometimes it looks like writing a letter no one reads. Sometimes it looks like feeding your kids with hands that shook from grief. Sometimes it's just keeping your dignity in a room designed to strip it from you. Every act of softness in a world that profits off cruelty, that's protest too. And let me say this gently. Not every war leaves bruises you can see. Some of y'all out there, you're marching and burning out at the same time. You're trying to fix the world, and your family, and your inbox, and your hormones, and your history, all before dinner. Baby, that's not just exhaustion. That's activist insomnia. We thought changing the world meant speeches and arrests, but now I see it also means calling your friend when she disappears, reading your kid a bedtime story you never had, deleting that app that makes you feel like you're always behind. Revolution is anything that brings you back to your full, undivided self. I used to lie awake rehearsing what I'd say if they came for me in the middle of the night. Not because I was dramatic, but because it happened. To people I knew. Because silence was comfortable for some, but deadly for others. And when you've seen too many tomorrows stolen, you stop waiting for the right moment to speak. So we spoke, we marched, we broke curfews and rewrote bedtime stories. And we paid for it too, in jobs lost, friends gone, wounds that still hum in the rain. But ask me if I'd do it again. Go on, ask. I'd whisper, yes, louder. You might be wondering, what does this have to do with sleep? Everything. Because peace is political. Because justice is a lullaby some of us ain't heard yet. Because real rest only comes when you're no longer scared someone's gonna knock wrong on your door at 3 a.m. and erase your name from the story. So if you're up tonight feeling the weight of the world like a brick in your chest, know this: you are not lazy. You are not broken. You are awake in a world that keeps telling you to pretend. And if your eyes still won't close, try this. Breathe in like you're inhaling a future worth fighting for. Exhale like you're letting go of what never served you. Feel your body under the covers. Feel the ancestors in your bones, the protest signs folded in your ribs. You made it here. That's enough revolution for tonight. Now hush, baby. Next time we talk, I'm going to tell you about the bird. The one that wouldn't shut up until I wrote it down. The one that sang even when the cage was locked tight. The one that made a whole world listen. But that's a story for the next breath. Coming up next, why the bird sings. Let yourself drift if you can. I'm right here with you. Still awake? That's all right, darling. Some nights don't end, they just soften, like a song you hum long after it stops playing. And tonight, we're humming with purpose. There was a time when I didn't think I had a story worth telling. Not because I hadn't lived, but because I had lived too much. Too many shadows, too many names I didn't choose. Too many days that ended with me staring at the ceiling, wondering if survival was supposed to feel so quiet. But the bird kept singing. You know which bird I'm talking about. The one in that cage. The one with clipped wings and a memory full of sky. The one who sings not because it is free, but because the song proves it's still alive. I know why the caged bird sings. That's the title the publisher wanted. I didn't argue. The truth is, I didn't name that bird. It named me. I remember sitting at my desk, hands hovering over the typewriter like they were scared to touch the keys. I had stories in me, baby. Stories pressed down like flowers in a book no one opens. I knew if I wrote them down, it would hurt. Not just the telling, but the remembering. Writing that book wasn't some grand artistic triumph. It wasn't champagne and applause. It was messy. It was like dragging my insides out and arranging them in neat little chapters. It was like bleed. Well, let's just say it was like crying in ink. And yet, I wrote. Not because I wanted to be famous, not because I wanted to be brave, but because that bird wouldn't shut up. That damn song kept fluttering in my chest, tapping against my ribs like a metronome. Tell it, tell it, tell it. So I did. And baby, let me tell you, the day I finished that book, I didn't feel free. I felt naked, like I'd walked through a storm and handed out pieces of my umbrella to strangers. But the letters started coming, from girls in Detroit, from boys in Johannesburg, from women who hadn't spoken to their own mothers in decades. They said, me too. And I realized something. The bird doesn't sing for pity. It sings to find its flock. That book, it was a map, not a perfect one, but it showed that pain can be drawn in lines and turned into light, that shame doesn't like fresh air, that sometimes just saying it out loud is how you begin to breathe again. I don't care what anyone tells you. If you're carrying a story in your chest, it'll rust your heart if you keep it locked up too long. Doesn't matter if it's ugly or raw or unfinished. Doesn't matter if nobody claps. Your job isn't to impress. Your job is to sing. even if your voice trembles. And darling, let me say this with love. The world don't need another perfect bedtime story. It needs yours, messy, miraculous, halfway healed. It needs the song you've been too scared to hum since childhood. It needs your version, because nobody else can write it. Not like you. You don't have to publish a book. You can scribble it on a napkin, whisper it to the moon, say it in the shower, dance it in the kitchen, paint it in your journal and close the cover with a smile. But don't bury it, sugar. The world already lost too many voices to silence. Still I rise, yes, but only after I wrote it down, only after I sat with my shadows and called them by name, only after I let my shame wear itself out and fall asleep in the corner. And when I woke up, I had a page, and then another, and then a whole chorus of people saying, "Thank you." So if tonight your heart's humming with something unspoken, lean in, don't shush it. Let the words stretch their wings, even if they're crooked, even if they stumble. Let them land. The bird sings because it must. And you, my love, must rest. Not because you finished the song, but because even singers need silence. Coming up next, becoming the storyteller. But for now, let your eyes fall gently shut. The page will wait. The words will wait. But your breath, your sweet, warm, slow breath, that's the part that can't. By now, you know I've done a little bit of everything. Danced, sung, acted, marched, mothered, mourned, and mended. But people don't remember all that. What they remember is the voice, the way I say things, the weight in my words, like it came from a place deeper than bone. But let me tell you something. Sugar, that voice, I had to build it brick by brick. I didn't come into this world knowing how to sound like Maya Angelou. I had to remember how to be her. When I started speaking again, after years of silence, it didn't come out in poetry. It came out shy, stammering, like a bird testing its wings in a storm. I didn't trust it. And why would I? It had betrayed me once, hadn't it? But over time, I started letting it out in small ways. Reading to myself, humming songs, reciting poems I found in the back of dusty books, and little by little, that voice stopped being a stranger. Then came the stage. Not the kind with velvet curtains and spotlights. Not yet. I'm talking about the kind of stage that shows up when someone hands you a mic at a church meeting or asks you to fill in for a teacher who didn't show up. Those little moments where a quiet voice has to rise just enough to be heard. And when I heard people lean in, oh baby, that's when I knew. The voice was mine again. People started calling me a storyteller, not a writer, not a speaker, a storyteller. And I like that, because storytellers ain't perfect. They don't pretend to be prophets. They just carry the tale with enough care that it don't break in their hands. And maybe, just maybe, they make someone feel a little less alone while doing it. But you want the truth? They didn't always want the whole me. They wanted the pretty voice, the grace, the dignity. They wanted a symbol, someone they could quote in commencement speeches without getting too uncomfortable, a woman carved from marble. And I tried that for a while. I tried being the statue, still, noble, eternal. But baby, statues don't sleep. Statues don't cry at commercials, or eat too many cookies in bed, or forget their own poems halfway through a reading. Statues don't snore. And I did all that and more. So I made a decision. I told the truth. Not all at once, not with a bang, but slow, like honey over toast. I told the truth about hurt, and hunger, and hope, about losing yourself in other people's dreams. about loving too hard, too fast, and sometimes not enough. I let the cracks show, and wouldn't you know it? That's when people started listening different, not just to Maya Angelou, but to themselves. People thought strength meant never bending, never breaking. But I learned, and I'm still learning, that strength is knowing how to bend without disappearing, how to break and still rise. Still, I rise. Not as a statue, but as a woman who's lived 1,000 lives and still makes her bed every morning like it matters. So if you're sitting there tonight thinking you need to have it all figured out before you speak, let me say this. Your voice is allowed to shake. Your story is allowed to be messy. You don't need a stage. You need a moment of honesty. And sometimes, that's enough to change a whole life. Starting with yours. Now hush a little. Not because you're silenced, but because the silence after truth, that's sacred. That's the part where healing begins. And next? Well, next we'll talk about what happens when the world starts clapping. When they give you the spotlight, but forget to ask if you're still tired. When the curtains are silk, but the pillow under your head feels all wrong. So let's stay right here, just a breath longer, before the curtain rises again. Because what comes next? That's the part where the applause gets loud, but the nights get quieter. It's time we talk about that strange thing called fame, and why the softest pillow can still feel like a stone. Fame, sugar. Fame is louder than a marching band and softer than a lie whispered in velvet. It sneaks into your room without knocking, dresses up like love, and steals the last clean glass of water on your nightstand. When it first came to me, I didn't greet it like a queen. I watched it from the window, unsure if I was supposed to bow, run, or laugh. You see, I had already lived through enough masks to know, not all attention is affection. They put me on stages, big ones, sent cars, cameras, even flowers that smelled like ambition. And I smiled, because that's what was expected. But there's a funny thing about lights. They shine so bright you can't see your own shadow anymore. And baby, I missed my shadow. I missed sitting on a quiet porch in Ghana, barefoot and invisible, drinking tea that tasted like stillness. The world gave me awards, titles, honorary everythings. Lovely, sure. But sometimes I looked at those golden plaques and thought, you never met the me who wept in stamps, did you? Fame wanted Maya Angelou the icon, but I was still Maya Angelou the woman, who snorted when she laughed, who cursed at her typewriter, who danced in the kitchen when no one was looking. They dressed me in silk, but forgot I came from cotton. They expected grace, but grace isn't a robe, it's a wrestle. I tried to tell him, in interviews, in poems, in sighs between takes. I said, I'm not your statue. I'm your sister, your auntie, your old friend who's seen too much and will still make you tea with too much honey. But some folks, they only hear what fits their frame. Fame doesn't fix loneliness. It just gives you better curtains to hide behind. And when the day's applause fades, and your bed still creaks the same, and the silence crawls up your legs like cold air, that's when you realize the spotlight doesn't tuck you in. There were nights I laid wide-eyed, thinking of the girl I used to be, the girl who read Shakespeare in whispers and believed in stars. And I'd ask myself, would she be proud of this version of us? Some nights, yes. Others, well, let's just say I had to remind her, and me, that we're still here, still trying. Baby, if you're chasing fame, just make sure you're also chasing peace. 'Cause fame claps for you in public, but peace waits for you in the dark. And if you ever have to choose, Choose the one that lets you sleep. Now scoot a little deeper under those covers. You and I both know sleep don't come easy when the world keeps ringing your phone. But I promise, you don't need the world tonight. Just your breath. Just this moment. And next, I'll let you in on a secret. Not the kind people whisper at brunch, but the kind you earn through heartache and hallelujah. The secret of grace, sugar, the kind that holds you even when nothing else will. Funny thing about grace, people talk about it like it's perfume, like it's something soft and floaty that just shows up when you need it. But grace is a muscle, baby. You build it, you stretch it, you tear it a little sometimes, and then it grows back stronger. I didn't come to grace by kneeling in pews or lighting candles. I found it on the kitchen floor, crying over a sink full of dishes and the wrong kind of peanut butter. I found it in traffic. I found it in letters I never sent, and in goodbyes I never got to say. Grace ain't always pretty. Sometimes it looks like staying quiet when you want to scream. Sometimes it's leaving before the hurt begins again. Sometimes it's sitting on your porch with a chipped cup of tea and saying, "Well, I made it to today." That counts for something. Forgiveness? That's the twin sister of grace, and she's just as stubborn. People think forgiving means letting folks off the hook. Oh no, sugar. Forgiveness means taking the hook out of your own chest. It means saying, "I won't bleed for this no more." You don't have to invite them back in. You just stop letting them live rent-free in your ribcage. And the hardest one to forgive? Oh, you know her. She's the one looking back at you in the mirror. I've said some mean things to myself in that mirror. Why weren't you smarter, quieter, softer, stronger? But grace whispered back, "You were alive. That's already a miracle." Grace isn't earned, it's practiced. Every day you choose not to carry someone else's poison. That's grace. Every time you pick joy even when the sky's fallen, that's grace too. It's the slow rebuild of your soul after a long winter. It's dancing a little, even with sore knees. It's laughing at a joke that don't deserve it, just because you need the sound. You see, I used to think strength was all about holding on. Turns out, sometimes it's about letting go with style, slipping off the weight like an old coat and walking on without looking back. That's what grace gave me. A lighter step, a clearer view. And darling, if you've been carrying a grudge so long you don't even remember who handed it to you, tonight's the night you set it down. Not because they deserve peace, but because you do. Because that extra weight is stealing your sleep, your laugh, your sparkle. Grace ain't about being nice. It's about being whole. You can be kind without being weak. You can be soft without shrinking. You can forgive without forgetting. You just don't let yesterday's hurt steal tomorrow's dreams. Now, take a breath. The deep kind. The kind that smells like clean sheets and a second chance. You're still here, still breathing, still rising. And next? Well, next, we're going home, baby. To the quiet room. To the place where the bed is warm and the tea's gone cold. Because you were too busy dreaming. A room of her own and some tea. This room? It knows me better than most people ever did. The walls have heard me laugh until I wheezed, cry into cold pillows, and whisper half sentences to myself like they were prayers. The bed's a little lopsided now. I always sleep on the left. Always have. Don't ask why, sugar. I just like to keep my right side ready in case a dream shows up unexpected. I've lived in grand places and rundown ones, but this little room, this one became mine in the quietest of ways. A lamp with a crooked shade, a notebook full of scratched out stanzas, a chipped mug I never quite washed properly. There's grace in having a space that doesn't ask you to perform, where your socks can stay on the floor and your hair can go wild. And the tea, Lord, I always make a cup and forget it, every time. I start writing or humming or just get caught talking to ghosts from long ago. Then I look over and there it is, cold, abandoned, patient, like it knows I'll come back when I'm ready. That's what healing is, baby. Forgetting the tea because you were finally too busy dreaming. Sometimes I sit on the edge of this bed, light barely spilling through the curtains, and I think about how many versions of me this mattress has held. The girl who wanted to disappear, the mother who didn't know how to rest, the woman who was too tired to cry, the legend who still missed her mama. This room saw me dance to no music, sing to no audience, scribble love notes I never sent. It held me when I collapsed and didn't ask questions. Didn't need to. You ever have a place like that? Not fancy, not big, just true? If you do, hold on to it. If you don't, build it. Brick by tender brick. It can be a room, a person, a notebook. Anything that holds you without conditions. Some nights, I talk to myself out loud. Not because I'm losing it, though that's always a possibility, but because the silence is kind here. It echoes like an old friend humming back. When the world gets too noisy, this room lets me hear myself think again. That's no small gift. And sometimes, baby, I catch my reflection in the window and I smile. Not because I see beauty or success, but because I see someone who made it through. Not untouched, not unchanged, but whole, in her own way. That's the kind of success nobody hands you a trophy for, but it's the only kind that lets you sleep easy. Now maybe your room isn't quiet yet. Maybe your bed is cold or too full of thoughts. That's all right. You're not behind. You're just becoming. And trust me, becoming takes time, and tea, and the occasional very bad poem written at 2:07 a.m. Tonight, let this room be yours too. Just for a moment. Sink into it. Breathe like you mean it. And remember, healing doesn't always feel like fire. Sometimes it feels like a chipped mug and a warm pillow. Somewhere between the last sip and the forgotten one, you'll find the beginning of peace. And isn't that what we were after all along? Now, let me tell you something about the trouble with being admired. Still not sleeping, baby? I figured. You're still here with me, under this soft, stubborn moon. That's all right. Some nights are just made for listening. So let's talk a little longer, you and me. No pressure, just presence. You know, it still startles me, the way folks look at me sometimes. Like I planned all this. Like I sat down one day with a blueprint titled How to Be a Legend, and followed it step by step with perfect handwriting. But sugar, most days I was just trying not to trip on my own shoelaces. I wasn't teaching, I was surviving. With some lipstick and rhythm, sure, but surviving all the same. People write to me now, saying I changed their lives. They say, Maya, your words saved me. And I always want to write back, child, I wrote them to save myself. You see, the truth is, I never meant to be a teacher. I only meant to tell the truth. But when you tell it right, the kind that aches a little and shines a little, it turns out folks start taking notes anyway. I've been called wise, but most of my wisdom came the hard way, through bruises and breakdowns and baking cornbread at 3 a.m. when I should have been sleeping, through trusting the wrong people and wearing the wrong shoes to the right party, through crying in public bathrooms and laughing at my own bad jokes. If that's wisdom, baby, then every woman with a broken heart and a good playlist is a prophet. You want to know the real secret? The best things I ever said, the things people quote with glitter fonts on Instagram, I didn't write them to be remembered. I wrote them because I was trying to survive my own memories. Sometimes I didn't even know I was saying something important until someone else said, "Thank you. I needed that." Now don't get me wrong, I'm grateful, truly. But it's a funny thing being turned into a quote, a lesson, a brand. Folks start treating you like a lighthouse, always lit, always sturdy. And they forget that even lighthouses crack in the storm. Sometimes I want to shout, I still forget my passwords. I still burn my toast. I still cry at sunsets and giggle when someone says casserole too fast. But instead, I smile. And I keep telling the truth. Because that's the only lesson I ever meant to teach. That you can be broken and brilliant at the same time. That you don't have to be perfect to be powerful. So if someone's ever made you feel like you had to have it all together before you mattered, let me offer this. Still I rise. Not because I planned it. Not because I'm special. But because I refused to stay flat. And you don't need to become me, baby. That's not the goal. You just need to become you, unapologetically. With all your weird dreams and soft fears and sudden laughter. Be the kind of person who makes strangers feel safe. Who dances even when the music is just in their own head. Who leaves kindness like breadcrumbs. And if someone tells you you're too much, smile kindly and tell them you've spent your whole life trying not to be too little. Now go on, pull the blanket a little tighter. The night's not over yet, but neither is your story. Let me tell you where I finally found peace, not in awards or applause, but in a little house, in a quiet room, with a bed that knew all my secrets, and a cup of tea that was always going cold. And that's exactly where we're headed next. Just you, me, and a room of one's own. With some tea we'll forget to drink, and a few dreams too wild to say out loud. Yet. You still there, sugar? Curled up in the dark, brows furrowed like you're trying to outthink sleep? That's all right. I used to do that too. Wrestle the moon like it owed me answers. But you know what I learned, baby? Sometimes the moon just wants company. No questions, just quiet. I'm older now. My bones creak like old floorboards in a house with stories. Some mornings, my knees remind me of every stage I ever danced on. My hands? They've forgotten a few names, but they still remember how to hold a warm cup like it's the first fire ever made. Time has thinned me out in some places and thickened me up in others, but I'm still here, still rising. You want to know a secret? These days, I don't chase sleep anymore. I invite it. And if it doesn't come, well, I write it a love letter. Something like, "Dear sleep, I understand you're busy tonight. I forgive you. I'll be here when you're ready. Bring dreams, if you've got some to spare." Getting old don't mean fading. It means softening, not into silence, but into grace. There's a difference. Grace is not a whisper. It's not a bow. It's a kind of slow dancing dignity, the kind that lets you forget the spotlight and remember your own name. I stopped rushing years ago. I move like honey now, slow, sweet, and deliberate. I don't care if folks think I'm taking too long to cross the street or find my words. I've waited decades to be unbothered. Let me be slow. And darling, let me tell you, slowness is a blessing. You notice things. The way a child's laugh sounds like a skipped stone. The way your breath feels when it finally comes easy. The way even silence has a rhythm if you listen close enough. My nights are softer now, No more banging on the door of sleep. I just open the window. Let the breeze decide if it's bringing rest or reflection. Either way, I sit with it. And if it gets too quiet, I talk to the moon. She's old too, you know, and wise. And she's seen enough lovers and liars and insomniacs to know the difference between worry and wonder. People used to ask me if I was afraid of dying. I'd say, no, baby. I'm afraid of not living enough before I do. And I lived. Lord, I lived. I danced, I cussed. I forgave people who didn't deserve it and held grudges that did. I wore dresses too bright for the occasion and laughed too loud in quiet churches. I lived so hard, even my regrets have wrinkles. And now I live softer. Not smaller, never that, just softer. I write when I can. I sleep when I may. And when I can't do either, I hum. Sometimes that's enough to remind the world I'm still here. So if you're sitting there feeling behind, feeling like life's running past you in sneakers and hashtags, just remember this. Even the moon takes its time. She rises slow, she wanes, she disappears, and still, she always comes back, full and luminous. You don't have to be quick, baby. You just have to keep showing up. However you are, that's enough. That's always been enough. Now pull the covers closer. Let the night do what it does best. Hold you without asking for anything in return. Because next, we're not going far. Just into my bedroom. The one that holds the ghosts of all my drafts and the echoes of my late night laughter. A room of my own. And some tea, of course. But don't expect the tea to be hot. I always forget it. Healing has a way of making you forget your tea. Hush now, sugar. Don't worry about answering. I know you're still awake, or drifting somewhere between this world and a softer one. That's all right. I've kept you long enough. But before I go, let me leave you with something. You've heard me whisper through the cracks of memory tonight. You've followed me from porches in the South to stages around the world. You've sat with me through silence, through rage, through velvet and smoke and bright, unrelenting mornings. And now we've come to rest, but not to stop. Because the truth is, I never did rest entirely, not even now. Even when my bones stopped moving, my words kept walking. And somewhere in a quiet room, someone, maybe you, found them, held them, sang them under your breath like a spell. And baby, that's what a life is. Not a single grand event, not one poem, one book, one march. It's the little echoes, the voices we send out that keep fluttering even after we're gone. I used to say, I know why the caged bird sings. But tonight, let me say this. The bird still sings, even in you, especially in you. Because you've made it through another night. And don't downplay that. The moon doesn't. She celebrates her own return every time, with light full enough to wake the sea. So if your heart still aches, if your mind still buzzes with things left undone, if you still doubt your worth after all these words, hush. You're not broken, baby. You're becoming. Becoming isn't tidy. It's wild. It's holy. It's late nights like this, where you sit with someone long gone and realize you've been talking to yourself all along. Your voice matters, even if it's quiet, even if it shakes, even if it hasn't spoken in years. And tonight, let it rest. I've poured what I could into your ears. Now pour yourself into stillness. Sink into the mattress like it's the arms of an old friend. Feel the sheets, cool, then warm. Listen for the silence. She's an honest guest, that one. Close your eyes, darling. The world can wait. You don't have to carry it tonight. And if dreams come, let them. But if they don't, that's all right too. You've already done something extraordinary. You listened. And I rise, I rise, I rise. And now, so can you. Good night, sugar. Sleep tight.